Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Save the Seconds podcast, episode 1. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Save the Second. This show offers commentary on the latest news associated with the NRA and Save the Second's endeavor to promote a strong, relevant, effective, and accountable NRA. My name is Ron Carter, and I'm joined with Anthony Garcia. Let's see if I can get this all squared away. There he is. Anthony,
Right.
tell me how you're doing, man.
Very good this evening. Had an awesome weekend. Trained a whole bunch of jiu-jitsu this morning. Ready to go.
Very good, man. Hey, let's just freaking hit it right off the bat. Getting the meat and potatoes. So 6th and 7th director resigns this week from the NRA Board of Directors. That was Richard Childress and Craig Morgan.
Yep.
What do you think?
I think I think it's really more of the same. Well, there's a couple of things here. Number one, we're going to get into a minute. I think this was related to Ollie North's deposition, which we'll talk about in a sec, just timing wise. But number two, I think it's more of the same that we saw like with Julie Golob and the other three before her. Directors wanting to get out of the line of fire. I think just they're trying to reduce their liability and exposure to everything. I think, we've heard from a few directors recently. They're talking about how they've been seeking legal counsel. They're paying for everything out of pocket. And looking at what's happening with Ollie North too. I mean, the guy's just being drained. His bank account's just being drained. I'm sure they don't want any part of that. I mean, I don't know how much Craig Morgan's worth, but he has a singing career. I mean, we all know Richard Childress is worth a couple of bucks. And I'm sure they don't want to lose that money. I mean, it's kind of a CYA thing, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me too. Richard Childress, and for those of you that don't know, we'll back up just a little bit. The NRA, the National Rifle Association, has 76 board of directors. 76 is a huge number, and currently 7 have resigned post NRA annual meeting in April. Richard Childress had been the first vice president of the NRA, and at the members meeting in April, Richard Childress stood in place of Oliver North. Oliver North had been the president and resigned the day before the members meeting. And of course, Childress had to stand up on the podium, read Oliver North's resignation in front of everyone, and then fulfill the duties that Oliver North should have done. So just a really sad thing, of course, for Childress to have been placed in that position.
Yeah.
And you could also argue that Childress was something perhaps next in line to be the president of the NRA. And he had an outstanding NASCAR career, of course. Many people know Richard Childress through that. He's definitely has a lot at stake, especially now with the board members. I guess we'll get into that in just a little bit, but 90 some odd board members, current and former board members of the NRA, were subpoenaed by the New York Attorney General in their investigation into the improprieties and potential bad stuff that would make the NRA lose its tax exempt status in the state of New York. So Richard Childress definitely has a lot to lose. Craig Morgan, I'm not so sure, but still, I doubt that these are the last resignations that we'll see. What do you think, Anthony?
Now, it's interesting about that subpoena and the timing of all of it. So those subpoenas went out August 6th, I think, and it could take a week or so to get served. I mean, depending on how available somebody is, a week, 2 weeks. So I'm wondering if those subpoenas stacked together with Ollie North's deposition, if it's just pushing more people out there. You're like, you know what? So I was going to try to hang in, but I'm out.
Right. Well, and keep in mind, we found out the news through the New York Times that 90 current and former board members had been subpoenaed on August 6th, and you can go and find that link. I'll see if I can post that link in the chat here on Facebook. But that information had already been given out, and the representation, the legal representation for the NRA, Brewer counselors and associates, they made a comment saying that they had received subpoenas on August 6th, and that's a lot of subpoenas, and good Lord, that's just nuts.
Apparently, they actually subpoenaed. Okay, so it says here William Brewer NRA's outside counsel said in a statement, as we understand it, counsel to the NRA board accepted service of a subpoena to the board. So maybe, I guess they subpoenaed the board as a whole and they didn't have to serve individual people.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
Well, and that council, yeah, maybe we should get into that next because, of course, also this week,
Oh, yeah.
we have some of the council being fired from the NRA, and of course, the NRA has had a lot of different lawyers and whatnot. Two of those, Charles Cooper and Michael Volkov, were attorneys that were outside counsel that were fired. What do you think of that, Anthony?
Now, why would you fire outside counsel? Well, here's the thing, too. Number one, why did they hire Brewer when they already had outside counsel? They already had Charles Cooper and Michael Volkov. And then we know Brewer comes in, kind of takes control of everything. And then why fire them? It doesn't make, I don't know, the whole thing just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Because they've had Cooper, Volkov, and Brewer all on board this whole time. And I've heard Brewer's been using other agencies to do work in certain states where he's not able to practice, right?
That's right. He cannot practice in the state of Virginia.
Yeah, and I know when Rob got his deposition done, it was an outside firm as well. So it just makes me wonder, why did they fire these guys? Are they trying to consolidate power under Brewer? Like, I don't know. I don't understand the whole thing. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
And that particular article comes from the Washington Post, and the title of the article is what is it? NRA shakes up.
Legal team amid intensifying civil war.
Yeah, intensifying civil war. Yeah, good Lord.
I think that is an interesting way to put it. Washington Post.
Oh my gosh, isn't it though? I mean, it's like Winter Soldier or something. Right. Oh my gosh, and that's so interesting. If let's just be hypothetical for a second. Of course, we're ultimately left to speculate with articles like this. We have to read between the lines a lot. If Wayne LaPierre is trying to get rid of people who were trying to revolt. There's mention of this coup,
which is what he claimed the two lawyers were involved in.
Right, exactly. So if they're a part of a coup, if Chris Cox is a part of a coup, if Oliver North is a part of a coup, if all of Ackerman McQueen, of course, was a part of this coup. How many people are trying to overthrow the NRA? And you're talking about people on the inside. I mean, what is their motive? What would their motive be for trying to revolt? I mean, I can't think of anything just right off the top of my head. What would motivate you to try to take over the NRA?
Well, according to a couple of very prominent board members, that's actually what we're trying to do, is take over the.
Sorry. Yeah. Ron Carter, Mr. Leader of the Poors in Colorado, is trying to take over the. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so absurd.
So the whole thing with the lawyers too, and you're talking about this whole supposed conspiracy against Wayne LaPierre. He let it infiltrate over time, years and years of these people infiltrating into his organization and having shady little deals in closets or whatever the hell. And so that leads us to this, and we had talked a little bit about this before. If all of that is true, if all of it's true, Wayne LaPierre should still be fired for incompetence.
Absolutely. If you allowed all of that to happen under your watch, I mean, you're either blind or incompetent, and absolutely. So, I mean, just getting, let's say, for example, Carolyn Meadows, the president of the NRA, who says, she said in her column, and I guess we can, throw this in there real fast, but in the American Rifleman column that she wrote the president's column in highlighted red, it says, quote, spurred on by the anti-gun media, these destructive forces accuse Wayne of an ever-changing litany of baseless offenses and claim he is mismanaging the association. So if I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and say that all of the accusations from Oliver North and Ackerman McQueen and everybody, let's assume all of that is blatant lies. Wayne LaPierre still allowed all of this to happen. You know, he's been, you know, the CEO / vice president of the NRA since Storm and Norman Schwarzkopf led coalition forces into Kuwait. You know, I mean, he should have had the foresight to see that something crazy was going on, and yet allowed this to happen.
Either way, he should be removed. Even if 100% of what he's saying is true, he should be removed.
I'll take it a step further. Removed, absolutely. Held accountable. Accountability. I mean, if you want a leader that has integrity, that can lead people, they have to be accountable for the problems of which have happened under their belt. You know, we see CEOs now get fired for having a high school yearbook picture that's questionable, and yet if all of these board members are getting subpoenas and Kerry Guard's a disaster and has lawsuits associated with it, and then everybody's against you, well, guess what? There's obviously some integrity problems or a lack of integrity at best.
Yeah, at best. And you know, that's the thing with the whole debacle. Everything they've said, and here I'm going further down this rabbit hole. Everything they've said. Now, I mean, obviously, me and you and all of our supporters think is BS. But even if it's true, and now A, we already talked, he should be removed anyway. But B, there should be absolutely no pushback to an independent audit if all that's true.
Absolutely. I mean, that would be an excellent means of vindicating that you were the innocent party in all of this. If I'm claiming to be the victim of a conspiracy to have a revolt and people take my position and whatnot, and they're launching accusations my way, an independent audit is going to show that, hey, I'm vindicated. I was in the right, and everybody else is wrong. And yet, we're not seeing that. We're seeing the opposite of that.
Yeah, it's more stonewalling, more circling the wagons. If somebody, you know, I've always found if somebody is innocent to something, if they've been wrongfully accused, whatever, that person goes to great lengths to prove that they are not guilty. They go to great lengths. And this, I don't see any of that here. They're acting like they're guilty.
Yeah, they're acting like they just want to sweep it under the rug and continue on. I mean, read President. Yeah, read President Meadows' article in the American Rifleman. I mean, that speaks volumes as to her continuing to defend, but not offer any potential evidence that you know, like for example, we are anti-gun media or we're destructive forces and whatever. You know, it's baseless and it's very telling.
We've got this whole article here on our blog. Here, I'll link it into the there. I think that worked. Tried to put it into the podcast thread on Facebook. I don't know.
The title of the blog post is Madam President, Fox News.
Yep. All right. We kind of went down a rabbit hole there. We were talking about the outside counsel being fired. We could talk a little bit about Ollie North's deposition on the 20th. That's interesting. Now, I haven't heard anything about it yet. I haven't heard anything. No leaks, nothing. And this whole thing has been characterized by leak after leak after leak. I haven't heard anything about this.
Yeah, this has been silly quiet. So if you were following North being subpoenaed by the New York Attorney General, he was supposed to have given his deposition last Friday. And at the 9th hour, the NRA's counsel, Brewer and Associates, filed a petition to stop that from happening, that deposition from happening, unless they were present, unless they had representation at the deposition. And of course, I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding of that through trying to educate myself is that there's a lot of proprietary information and privileged information that Oliver North could have spoke or could have given the New York Attorney General. And in those type of situations, counsel for the defendant, I guess you would say, they can object to certain information being given because of its proprietary nature or its privileged nature. Now, they ended up losing that. On Monday, a judge looked it over and said, nope, you're not going to be here, NRA counselors or representation, Brewer and Associates, and we're going to proceed with the deposition. Deposition happened on Tuesday, August 20th. Richard Childress, of course, had put in his resignation. If you read his resignation letter, which is also on our blog, he dated his resignation on August 19th. So it coincides almost immediately with Oliver North's deposition, and apparently that deposition was 900 pages long.
Now, we had an interesting comment from a lawyer in our Friends of group where she said that may not necessarily mean anything, as there are certain documents that can take a lot of pages, but it is interesting. I think it's interesting that it's that much stuff. I mean, I don't know. To me, what was the analogy she used? I thought it was pretty apt. I guess as somebody who doesn't know anything about guns, 10,000 rounds of ammunition sounds like a lot. Like, to me, 900 pages sounds like a lot. But somebody that's familiar with it, it's like, that's all they had.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I've got my reloading bench over here, man. I crank out rounds left and right. Plus
Right.
what I shoot. So that's an excellent analogy. 900 pages may not be much, but I mean, can you imagine going through that page by page?
Right. That's got to be
lot.
a job.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that it's been very quiet, the fact that it coincided with both of those resignations and the resignation of there was somebody from the ILA as well that resigned.
Yeah, and that's on our website too. You can go to Why Reform at the bottom. I think that was David Lehman, who is the Deputy Executive Director and General Counsel of the NRA ILA. Yeah. So, and by the way, it's funny too, if you look at the suspensions and resignations, with the exception of the outside counsel and Emily Cummins from last year, all of those resignations have come from the ILA. That ought to be telling. They're not coming from the NRA House proper. You're not seeing, for example, like Josh Powell resign. You're not seeing John Frazier, the secretary, resign. You're seeing the ILA folks, and the ILA, of course, is the Institute for Legislative Action, and they're the lobbying group. And yeah, we've had some major departures on that side of the house, and that's even more scary because, of course, they do so much lobbying. If they're ineffective at lobbying, then there's not another 2A group or organization that I'm aware of that can pick up that slack.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of a hole. So that's why that in particular is quite concerning to me. Some of the most concerning news in this whole thing, obviously, if we're looking at this from a pro 2A standpoint. But we've heard from a couple of employees recently, at least I have, within the last few months. I've heard from people who've left the ILA or been offered a resignation package with severance pay in return for signing a non-disclosure agreement. So obviously I can't mention any names. But they were let go, laid off, told to get out, whatever, however you want to say it, because the ILA couldn't fund. They didn't have enough money. That's what they were saying. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's what I've been told, which is very, very concerning to me. That's
ridiculously concerning. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that indicates the dire state, the dire state that the NRA is in, and that's why what we're doing is so bloody important to push as hard as we can. That's the state that they're in. Now, we already knew the NRA was taking loans from the ILA. We already knew that. There's been more rumors out there confirmed by various people. They've been taking loans from friends of the NRA and somebody else. I forget who it was. But they were taking secured loans. I don't know what they secured them with. I assume property or something. But that's the point. That's the place they're at. Now they're saying everything's fine. We're funded. Donations haven't dropped. It's all BS.
Yeah, and that BS. Yeah, of course, it has to be. I mean, that's the funny thing. Of course, with President Carolyn Meadows, she said at least 2 or 3 times, and even once in her column that everything's hunky dory, everything's fine. Yeah. what planet is she living on that everything's fine? You've got so many subpoenas and investigations and court filings. You've got David Delaquila filing a class action lawsuit against the NRA. In what world is this okay? This is not okay, and it's if the ILA is hurting, well, that is definitely going to impact the ability to elect and hold accountable politicians that are pro Second Amendment. And we've already seen here in the past couple of weeks several Republicans become turncoats, right?
Yep.
And that, oh my gosh, that is ridiculously scary to me, because I think it was in the Senate. I mean, you've got an assault weapons ban bill that's in the Senate right now, and all it lacks is 20 votes. 20 votes, Eesh.
Did you actually read the text of that bill? The way I read it, it seemed like it would ban nearly any semi-automatic firearm, nearly any one, including pretty much all handguns. I mean, it's obviously blatantly illegal when you look at Heller and all those decisions, but it just the lengths that it went to. Good Lord.
Yeah, I mean, it's
the fact it has any votes. Like, I don't want to say, like, that doesn't scare me. It kind of disgusts me. We'll say that. We'll say it disgusts me, and it's revolting.
Right. Yeah, revolting is an excellent word. And of course, that's exactly what the ILA's job is to get done, to fight that stuff, tooth and nail. And if they're diminished, that's scary. And like I said, I think that the NRA ILA is, well, I mean, they're the only ones that have any sort of lobbyists, as far as Second Amendment organizations is concerned. Gun Owners of America just has like a handful. Firearms Policy Coalition has less than a handful, and most of those are state lobbyists in California, if I understand correctly. There's no other group that I'm aware of that can just immediately jump into the weakened state of the ILA and pick up where they left off, and that's scary.
Yeah, it would leave one heck of a void. That's absolutely for sure. It would leave one heck of a void. There's no shortage of funding for people that want to get out there, or for people that want to donate money and make it happen, right? So, the ILA gets X amount of dollars. How quickly would those dollars find their way to other groups? Like, for example, the FPC, which I'm actually a supporter of. But the question is, with the elections coming up and everything, the timing is bad.
It's terrible.
It's terrible. It's pretty much the worst timing that we possibly could have hoped for. They have to see that too. Like, that just further proves to me Wayne LaPierre's incredible incompetence. He has to understand the timing right now. The fact he doesn't just step down tells me he doesn't give two furry rats behinds about 2A rights. He doesn't care at all.
Well,
he doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, that seems to be very telling.
Now, that's not to say the guy in the past hasn't done good work, because he did, and I'm not afraid to say that he did do good work. But now,
yeah, what have you done for me today?
Right.
And of course, we have the information. Oh, and look, everyone, we have Rob Pincus joining us.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, man, we're just knee deep into this first episode. It's good to see you. How are you, Rob?
Well, I'm good. I mean, I'm up here in the mountains, and somehow I end up at like 11.5 with cell service. So here we are.
That's amazing. Can you show us a little bit more? Oh my gosh! Oh, that is beautiful.
San Juan Mountains. We got a little America. The camp's up there. Got the daughters and the granddaughter chilling out. But meanwhile, still engaging every once in a while, checking in every couple days, walk away from every couple times a day, and lots going on with us. What were you guys specifically talking about? Sorry, I'm late.
What did we just talk about?
We were just talking, regards to Wayne LaPierre being either incompetent or not knowing exactly, the timing of all these subpoenas and whatnot. Any one of us would have probably stepped down by now and gotten out of the way. But yet he seems to be remaining. What do you think about that, Rob?
And the timing coming up to the election.
Yeah, much has been made about that. You know, the one of the rallying cries for the last several years, for those of us even before this year's kind of craziness in terms of the revelations, you know, for years a lot of us have been saying, hey, it's time for Wayne to move on, time for this Ackerman McQueen relationship to evolve or go away. Lots of time for change has come and gone, and now it's sort of being forced from the outside, and it would have been a lot better if it happened from the inside. And you know what organization since Enron has the leader not stepped aside? Somebody brought up the example of Al Franken recently, right? Al Franken was literally a comedian and literally in public made a joke, had some sexual innuendo, and literally stepped down and ended his political career instantly. As an example. And yet here we are. With Wayne LaPierre, even if everything's false, just for the sake of the organization, move on. And of course, we know everything isn't false, and it, at least, as you guys have pointed out, happened on his watch. So, shame on those who are circling the wagons around him, and especially this week, celebrating the fact, that as if he's, magically powerful, that he talked to the president and maybe got him to change his rhetoric on universal background checks. Well, where were you on bump stocks? Where were you on all the other rhetoric for the last few years?
Yeah, that's a great point that we didn't bring up, and it seems so ironic. I think that was the New York Times that wrote that article. That so LaPierre has the ability to make a 30-minute phone call with the president, and somehow, why isn't he calling the president every freaking 15 minutes? If he has that sort of power,
because he's busy with New York State Attorney General's office and suing Ackerman McQueen and worried about subpoenaing me, subpoenaing you. He's worried about all kinds of other stuff other than actually fighting for the Second Amendment, which is why he should get out of the way and let the NRA get back to business.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we learned, I believe it was yesterday, that Wayne LaPierre himself had been subpoenaed by the New York Department of Finance. Have you heard about that, Rob?
I did, actually. I checked in this morning and saw several people talk about how it's just a fishing expedition. It's a waste of resources. Pretty much everything that we've been saying about the subpoenas that went out to me and several others. And we haven't talked about it much, but I know you put it out there that that this is potentially coming up for you as well. Like this idea that this is a fishing expedition by the New York State, and yet the NRA is sending subpoenas out, and they joined me, 10 miles from here in the middle of nowhere a couple months ago on a fishing expedition. Nothing came of it, obviously, because I didn't steal any documents, nor did anyone who gave them to me steal any documents.
Right.
Now, can we talk for a sec about the power the New York AG has over a nonprofit organization? Because it's a scary amount of power. I believe they can remove directors, they can remove the CEO. Is that right?
Yeah, they have a lot. There's a lot of leeway with law, and a lot of people have talked about the bylaws of the NRA, and I know a lot of directors have been afraid of certain potential allegations of infractions of the bylaws that could be used against them by the organization, potentially even being sued by the NRA just for simply asking some questions and trying to get this set right. Well, as many have pointed out, they also need to be really worried about New York state law and their responsibility to the members as directors of the organization. They do have a direct responsibility. And I know a lot of people have said, well, only if you're on certain committees or only if you're in certain positions. But a lot of people read those laws in New York a lot differently. And we know, of course, that there's been a lot of subpoenas thrown around to directors as well. And of course, the biggest one being Oliver North last week, immediately followed by Richard Childress's resignation. And remember, Richard Childress decided not to take his turn as president after Oliver North stepped aside, didn't finish his term, and then obviously didn't run for his second term. So there's a lot of potential overlap there, why that resignation happened when it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. That's too it's too convenient to just be a coincidence. All right.
Oh man.
Okay.
Now, with all of this, I mean, exactly. There's so much, and it seems like we, unfortunately, just kind of skimmed the surface a little bit on a lot of these topics. Like, I mean, we could probably spend all day talking about Richard Childress or Craig Morgan or Julie Gollub's resignation or the three Sean Maloney and Tim and I mean, all of these people that have resigned and on all the implications for that. So, what do you think happens next? What do you think, Anthony?
Well, coming up to this next meeting, I think that's going to be, it's going to be some sort of turning point to this next meeting. Now, which way it turns, that's, I think, the question. Are we going to see more stonewalling, more of the same BS, in which case we know, okay, they're It's now just up to the members. Nothing is going to happen from the inside. So it'll either turn that direction, or it'll turn the other direction where we see something spectacular happen. But I'm not holding out my breath for that one.
What do you think, Rob?
Rob?
Yeah, I think same thing. I think there's going to be another exodus of, potentially en masse some resignations, and it's probably going to go one of two ways after the board of directors meeting. It's going to be those who are still fighting from the inside. We know who, Robert Brown would be one example. He was part of the public call for an audit. Buzz Mills, Alan West. We know some others who've lost committee positions, which indicates they must be fighting from the inside. Dwayne Liptak probably being the biggest one, who's also made some public comments. We know there are others who have talked to us that have not gone public with their concerns. Either we're going to see a bunch more people leave who are on the right side of this, or potentially, through some machination or some integrity, we're going to see a change at that board meeting in just a few weeks in Alaska, and we're going to see some resignations of the old guard, the people who have been stonewalling and circling those wagons. But either way, I think we're going to have more change in September.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Happen.
What do you think our followers, folks that are listening to this, what do you think that they can do right now to try and encourage that change?
As far as what they can do right this second, make sure you've all written your letters to the address we've been putting out. I'm going to mail out again on Monday. If you're not on the email list, be on the email list. Make sure you send in those letters. People can ignore emails. You can't ignore 1,000 envelopes overflowing out of the broom closet. Okay, they try to stuff them in the broom closet, try to get away from them, but it ain't going to work. Okay, do that. We've been contacting, we're doing the 76 and 76, but here's the next big thing besides the contacting and everything, okay, which is great and it's fantastic, but the ultimate power in this organization does lie with members. It lies with those who have voting power. What we need are more members. More members, more votes. The members control everything. Eventually, in the end, they do, because they control the makeup of the board. There are procedures in the bylaws to do more than just elect board members. That's a conversation for another day and another time in the future, but there's a lot more we can do the more manpower we have. So we got to spread the message. We got to tell people. I mean, there's just the simple Facebook stuff. There's the shares, there's the likes, that kind of thing. But jump into that Friends of group. We've got a discussion group now. And we can get in there and start to network. Okay, we've got one guy who printed out a bunch of brochures, and he's heading out to gun shows local to him. Awesome, by the way. Love the brochure design. We can get that out public, I think, too, or we can make some more or whatever. Get out to gun shows and start talking to people who may not have the same kind of social media presence that we all do. Start getting more people informed. So the more people that are informed, the more voting members get on board with it, and that's where the power is. That's how we solve it.
Bingo. What do you think, Rob?
Yep. I mean, that's it. I think more member activity. That is absolutely the deal, right? And I will tell you this. I talk a lot about the American gun owner because I think a lot of American gun owners have felt disenfranchised by the lack of representation that the NRA has given them and the lack of messaging the NRA has been putting out that actually resonates with them. And that's why we have these great organizations. And I don't think they should go away. Even if the NRA completely reforms, we shouldn't have Black Guns Matter, Liberal Gun Owners, Liberal Gun Club, Armed Equality. I mean, all of these organizations need to remain for sure. And the fact that they needed to stand up, I think that's another important indication of the problems that have existed far outside of just Wayne LaPierre or far outside of the stuff that's been revealed as these lawsuits and allegations have come to light. I think it's really important that American gun owners speak up because as far as I'm concerned, there's 120 million potential NRA members. We know there's a lot of former NRA members who have left. We know that there are members like us who are very concerned. We're still counted in, I don't know what their number is this week, but if it's 4.5 million or 5 million, whatever it is, we're still counted amongst those members. And as voting members, we do have a certain amount of power. Now the question becomes, do you join and spend money, continuing the profit motive for those who are in power and for their cronies? I think no. I don't think you join right now, but I do think you should be very vocal. If you are a member, it becomes even much more important that you're vocal. But either way, that's the trick, is making sure that while they're throwing out this 4.5 or 5 million number, we are also showing tens of thousands or potentially millions of disgruntled American gun owners who want the NRA to be better. And hopefully that's the most important mission that we represent. I think save the second is that we do represent the voices of those who feel disenfranchised right now and who are concerned.
Right. Absolutely. All right, so closing arguments, guys, or discussions or whatnot. Do you have anything you want to add before we wrap this thing up? Anthony, go.
Like we talked about before, the power of the New York AG has over the NRA right now is very concerning to me. I think we need to watch that with a lot of interest. Everything that comes out about that, they have the ability to remove board members, to remove CEOs, which in this case wouldn't be a bad thing. But we've got to pay attention to that. That's the only other thing that I really see happening before the board meeting. Any movement there, or I don't think anything is going to come out about Ollie North's deposition. I don't think we're going to hear anything. That's been very quiet, very bizarrely quiet, and I think it's going to stay that way. That's really all I got.
All right, Rob, go. Last final thoughts.
Yeah, I think it is important to realize, as I've said, for months now, change is going to happen. The question is, and I think I've said it for years, is the change going to come from the outside, or is the change going to come from inside the gun community? It's too late for it to come from inside the NRA, quite frankly. I mean, we know what happens and what has happened to the board members. Only with the voice of all the members and American gun owners behind them can the directors and employees left inside the NRA that want things to change have any hope of getting it done. So the change is coming from the outside. Hopefully it's not so far outside that it's Washington, D.C.'s Attorney General or New York's Attorney General or just the donors completely cutting off all the funds. We know about the potential class action lawsuit. Well, it's been filed, and we'll see if it's successful or not. There's a lot going on from the outside, and it's amazing how tone deaf the NRA's leadership and would-be leadership is right now. So let's make that change happen from at least inside the gun community. Huh?
Yep. Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching the very first Save the Second podcast, episode 1, of course. And of course I have several firearms down here. And in case you were wondering, I am not sponsored by Bloomberg, Everytown, Soros, or anybody else. In fact, I'm going to do some dry fire practice, just to have some fun, and all that good stuff. Thank you very much for watching. Of course, Anthony Garcia there is neither a Bloomberg or anti-gun anyway. I think Rob, you're not in full kit right now, so there might be some questionable things on that.
Well, actually, I'll tell you what. We'll just take a 30-second pause here because Toddler Pincus, who had an awesome birth gun gift when she was born a little over 4 years ago. Frankly, it might have been exactly 4 years ago when she received this kind of custom-built, super cool AR.
No way.
With pink accoutrement.
Oh, heck yes.
Just shot that for the first time on her own, hit a couple cans, so people can see my social media feed and her social media feed. Has some pictures of that. That just happened this morning for the first time ever. She shot a real gun. So I don't think that's a mom's demand action Bloomberg kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't think so either, awesome, man. Oh my gosh. Hey, thank you very much for sharing that with us, Rob. Anthony, thank you for getting this squared away, and to everyone that has been watching, thank you so much. Thank you for your support. Thank you for joining us and calling for an NRA that's effective, relevant, strong, and accountable. We'll try and do another podcast next week. Until then, take care.